What's up, Cloud Gamers? Welcome back to the Cloud Gaming Extreme channel. We're taking a look at Diablo 4's open beta here on Shadow for their power upgrade, and performance here on the hardware is actually looking pretty good, so I have high hopes for when the game launches. But let's get in and take a look at our settings here. So as far as our desktop goes here on Shadow, you can see we have a great connection over here. Bandwidth isn't going to be a problem here for me with 1 gig internet, and my latency to the data center here is pretty typical for me, 20-23 milliseconds with no packet loss. We're on 1440p here at 144 FPS, so this will be able to run variable refresh rate using the Xbox controller for Diablo and 60 megabits per second for my bitrate there. And that's going to keep things looking really nice here for Shadow. Jumping into the game, 1440p, no VSync, no cap on the frames, no DLSS, and then just the high preset, which is the highest that you can go in the game to see what Shadow will do with that here for us. And like I said, performance is actually looking pretty good. So if you've been following the game at all, you know that these city and town areas are a bit rough to run. That can be on the server side as well as CPU intensive here on the local side. And I did have some concerns about Shadow's CPU here, as the power upgrade does tend to bottleneck with the CPU in a lot of games. Now, there are areas that does happen, but luckily for the most part, as I got into it here at 1440, we're able to keep things pushed and the CPU is keeping up pretty well. So no major issues there, luckily, whether I'm outside or in dungeons or whatever. It's mostly just the typical performance issues that everybody's seeing inside those towns and city areas and that type of thing. But when it comes to the performance, when we get into like more stuff going on screen, again, things stay pretty well here, just running the high settings, no DLSS. And with the usage we're seeing here, I wouldn't necessarily get into DLSS at 1440p, maybe at 4K, but we'll take a look at that as well. Now, there are these invisible walls that you'll run into, or server banding, or whatever the case, where you're loading in, very high CPU usage, and then all of a sudden things will get back to normal as the next area is kind of loaded in. This happens all the time as you move area to area in the game, even if you go back and forth. But it's not just something on Shadow. This is just kind of typical here on PC. And then, like I said, when you're inside the dungeons, performance is good as well, which I would expect. It's pretty typical to what you get outside. So I really only ran into a few issues here and there, and most of it has been server side, but I can say that for Diablo 4 on Shadow PC, everything is working well. So I do have high hopes when the game comes out. But like I said, in these city or town areas, that's where you can expect to see those spikes and dips and little issues, but nothing that's game breaking. And luckily, typically when you're in combat and getting really busy, it doesn't tend to happen as much either. Now, I did mention DLSS, and I think I would only use that for 4K, but I will switch this over here to DLSS quality real quick, and you can see the difference here. Of course, much less GPU usage, which is just putting more pressure on the CPU, really. If I was running a higher resolution, I would probably use DLSS, but I just don't think I'm going to worry about it at 1440p for the performance that we're getting here. I think it's more than acceptable, but the option will be there if you're running a higher resolution. At 1080p, you might run into more CPU bottlenecks because the GPU won't be as busy either. But ultimately, Diablo 4's open beta here running great on Shadow. Of course, picture quality staying really nice with Shadow with my higher bitrate here. Latency feels great, and the game's running really well. So hopefully when Diablo 4 officially launches in June, it'll continue to run well on Shadow and in other places, and hopefully they get the little PC issues figured out. But anyways, guys, thanks a lot for coming to check out the video. As always, we really appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next one.